You know that feeling when you open the crisper drawer and everything you bought last week is already going bad. The lettuce is slimy, the peppers are soft, the green beans you were so excited about are sitting in a puddle of their own moisture. You throw it all in the trash and you think there has to be a better way. I know that feeling because I lived it for years. But here's what opened my eyes. About 8 years ago, I was visiting my Amish neighbor Daniel's home during the middle of January. Snow on the ground, nothing growing for months, and his wife Rebecca brought out green beans for dinner. Not frozen green beans, not canned from a store. Green beans she had put up the previous July that tasted like they just come out of the garden. Then she took me down to their cellar, and I'm telling you, I just stood there, floor to ceiling, both walls, hundreds of jars, tomatoes, corn, beets, beans, peppers, pickles, apple sauce. Some of those jars were dated 2 and 3 years back. No refrigerator, no freezer, no electricity at all. And every single jar was perfectly preserved, safe, and full of flavor. I asked Daniel how this was possible, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "We don't store food, we put it to sleep." That idea completely changed how I think about the harvest. And today, I'm going to walk you through the 4 Amish methods for preserving vegetables without refrigeration, some of them lasting up to 3 years on a shelf. And stay with me to the end because I'm going to share an Amish fermentation technique that actually makes your vegetables more nutritious after you preserve them than they were the day you picked them. Let's start with the simplest method, the one that requires the least equipment and the least experience. This is where I tell anyone to begin, and it's where the Amish start teaching their kids about food preservation. It's root cellar storage. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I don't have a root cellar. I live in a regular house. That's fine. I'm going to show you how to create the same conditions without digging anything. But first, let me explain why this works so well, because once you understand the principle, you can adapt it to almost any situation. The Amish understand that vegetables don't spoil because of time. They spoil because of conditions. Heat speeds up decay, light breaks down nutrients, the wrong humidity either dries things out or creates mold. A root cellar defeats all 3 of those enemies at once. The ideal conditions are simple. You want a temperature between 32 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You want humidity between 85 and 95% for most root vegetables. And you want darkness, that's it. In those conditions, carrots will last 4 to 6 months. Beets will hold for 3 to 4 months. Potatoes can go 5 months or more. Turnips, parsnips, cabbage, winter squash, onions, all of them store beautifully when the conditions are right. Here's how the Amish do it. They take wooden crates or boxes and layer their root vegetables in damp sand. Not wet sand, damp. You should be able to squeeze a handful and have it hold its shape without dripping water. The sand keeps the humidity right around each vegetable and prevents them from touching each other, which stops rot from spreading. Carrots go in standing upright with the tops trimmed to about 1/2 inch. Beets lay on their sides. Potatoes get their own box because they release gases that can affect other vegetables. Every item is inspected. Anything with a nick, a bruise, or a soft spot gets eaten first or preserved another way. Only perfect, undamaged vegetables go into long-term storage. Now, if you don't have an underground cellar, here are some options that can give you those same conditions. An unheated garage in zones 3 through 6 will often stay in that 32 to 40 degree range through the winter months. A north-facing closet in a basement works surprisingly well. I've even seen folks bury a clean metal trash can in the ground, insulate the lid with straw bales, and use that as a simple root storage pit. The key is monitoring your temperature with a simple thermometer. If it stays in that range and you can keep the light out, you've got a working root cellar. One thing I want to be straight about, root cellar storage works best in cooler climates. If you're in zones 7 through 9, your winters may not stay cold enough consistently, and you'll get better results with the other methods I'm about to share. But for folks in zones 3 through 6, this is the easiest, lowest cost preservation method there is, and the Amish have relied on it for generations. The next method builds on that same principle of removing the conditions that cause spoilage, but it takes a completely different approach. This is dehydrating, and the Amish have been doing this long before anyone sold an electric food dehydrator. The idea is simple. Bacteria and mold need moisture to survive. Remove the moisture from a vegetable and you remove the ability for anything to grow on it. Properly dried vegetables, stored in airtight containers in a cool, dark place, can last 1 to 2 years easily. Some, like dried herbs and dried peppers, will last even longer. Here's how the Amish do it traditionally. They slice vegetables thin, about 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick. Uniformity matters here because you want everything to dry at the same rate. Tomatoes get sliced into rounds. Green beans get split lengthwise. Peppers get cut into strips. Corn gets blanched briefly, about 2 to 3 minutes in boiling water. Then the kernels get cut from the cob. Herbs get bundled and hung. In Amish homes, they use wooden drying racks set in a well-ventilated area with good airflow. Some use a screened porch. Some build simple solar dehydrators, which are just wooden boxes with mesh trays and a glass or clear panel top that traps the sun's heat. On a good sunny day with low humidity, tomato slices can dry in 1 to 2 days. Green beans take a little longer, usually 2 to 3 days. If you don't have this set up for sun drying, you can use your oven set to its lowest temperature, usually around 170 degrees Fahrenheit, with the door cracked open about 2 inches to let moisture escape. Ideally, you want to stay in the range of 125 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit for vegetables. Some ovens won't go that low, so the cracked door helps bring it down. Check your slices every hour or so. You're looking for vegetables that feel leathery and dry to the touch. Tomatoes should feel like a flexible chip. Green beans should snap when you bend them. If there's any softness or moisture when you squeeze them, they need more time. Once they're fully dried, store them in glass jars with tight fitting lids. The Amish use mason jars for this, same jars they use for canning. Keep them in a dark, cool spot. A pantry shelf away from any window works perfectly. And here's a tip Daniel's wife taught me. Drop a small piece of dried bread in each jar. It absorbs any residual moisture and acts as an indicator. If the bread gets soft, your vegetables weren't fully dried and you need to put them back in the dehydrator or oven for a few more hours. Now here's where we get into the method that most people find the most intimidating, but it's also the most powerful for long-term storage. This is pressure canning, and it's how the Amish put up the majority of their vegetables for 1 to 3 year storage. When I say I saw jars in Daniel's cellar dated 3 years back, those were pressure canned jars. This is the method that makes that kind of shelf life possible. I want to be honest with you. Pressure canning intimidated me for a long time. I'd heard the stories about botulism, about exploding canners, and I stayed away from it for years. That was a mistake. Once Daniel's wife, Rebecca, walked me through the process, I realized it's not complicated at all. It's precise. Yes, you have to follow the steps, but it's not difficult, and when you do it right, it's completely safe. The Amish have been doing this for generations, feeding their entire families from these jars, and they don't take shortcuts because their children are eating this food. Here's the key thing to understand, and this is the food science that makes the whole thing work. Most harmful bacteria, including the one that causes botulism, are killed at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature of boiling water. But botulism spores, the dormant form, can survive boiling. To kill the spores, you need to reach 240 degrees Fahrenheit. And the only way to get there in a home kitchen is with a pressure canner. The pressure inside the canner raises the boiling point of water above 212 degrees. At 10 to 15 pounds of pressure, depending on your altitude, the temperature inside those jars reaches 240 degrees or higher. At that temperature, every botulism spore is destroyed. The jar seals in a vacuum as it cools, and nothing can get in. That's why a properly pressure canned jar of green beans can sit on a shelf for 3 years and still be perfectly safe. Here's the basic process. You start with clean mason jars and new lids. The jars can be reused season after season, but the lids with the rubber seal should be new each time. You pack your prepared vegetables into the jars, leaving the right amount of headspace at the top. For most vegetables, that's 1 inch. Headspace matters because the food expands slightly during processing, and if the jar is too full, it can prevent a proper seal. Pour hot water or hot cooking liquid over the vegetables, still leaving that 1 inch of headspace. Run a clean butter knife or thin spatula around the inside edge of the jar to release any trapped air bubbles. Wipe the rim of the jar perfectly clean with a damp cloth. Even a small piece of food on the rim can prevent the lid from sealing. Place the lid on and screw the band on fingertip tight, not as tight as you can, just snug. The air needs to be able to escape during processing. Place your jars in the pressure canner with about 2 to 3 inches of hot water in the bottom. Lock the lid. Let the steam vent for 10 minutes before you put the weight on. This purges the air from inside the canner so you're working with pure steam pressure. Then place the weight on and bring it up to the correct pressure. For most low acid vegetables, vegetables at elevations below 1,000 feet, that's 10 pounds of pressure. If you're above 1,000 feet, you'll need to increase to 15 pounds. Processing times depend on what you're canning and the jar size. Green beans in quart jars need 25 minutes at pressure. Carrots need 25 minutes. Corn kernels need 85 minutes because they're so dense. Tomatoes, because they're on the border between high and low acid, get special treat. Most experienced canners add 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice per quart to ensure the acidity is safe, and then they can be processed in either a water bath or a pressure canner. When the time is up, you turn off the heat and let the pressure drop to 0 on its own. Don't rush it. Don't try to cool the canner down. Let it happen naturally. Once the pressure is at 0, carefully remove the lid, lift out your jars, and set them on a towel on the counter. Don't touch the lids. Within the next few hours, you'll hear that beautiful pop, 1 jar at a time. That pop is the lid sealing down as the jar cools and creates a vacuum inside. The next morning, press the center of each lid. If it's firm and doesn't flex, you've got a proper seal. If it flexes or bounces, that jar didn't seal, and you should refrigerate it and use it within a week. I want to be clear about something because this is important. The processing times and pressures I just mentioned come directly from USDA canning guidelines. The Amish follow these same principles, passed down and verified through generations of practice. This is not an area where you experiment or take shortcuts. You follow the tested times. You use a proper pressure canner, not a pressure cooker. You check your gauge or your weight before each season. When you do it right, it's one of the safest food preservation methods that exist. When you cut corners, that's where problems happen. The Amish don't cut corners, and neither should you. Now, what I've shared with you today is a real piece of the puzzle, but it's still just one piece. If you're tired of fighting the same battles every season, if you want a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, then I'd really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and it's everything I've learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It's got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold, and it includes a companion planting field guide so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you'll see it. The second way, if you're watching on a television or a computer screen, is to take out your phone, open up your camera like you're going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that, and it'll bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it's the best investment you can make in your garden. Now, there's a thread that runs through all of these methods that I want to address directly because I know it's on your mind. Safety. The number one reason most people never try preserving their own food is fear. Fear of botulism. Fear of making their family sick. And I get it. I felt the same way. But here's what I learned from the Amish that completely reframed how I think about food safety. The Amish don't think of preservation as risky. They think of it as controlled. Every method I've shared with you today works by controlling one specific thing. Root cellar storage controls temperature and humidity to slow biological activity almost to a stop. Dehydrating removes the moisture that bacteria need to survive. Pressure canning uses heat and vacuum to destroy every harmful organism and seal the food away from contamination. And the fermentation method I'm about to share creates an acidic environment where harmful bacteria simply cannot live. Each method is attacking the problem from a different angle, but they all share the same principle. You're not hoping the food stays good. You're creating specific, measurable conditions that make it impossible for the food to go bad. That's not risky, that's controlled, and the Amish have been proving it works 3 meals a day for generations. Let me share some patterns I've noticed where the conventional approach and then the Amish approach handle things differently. I did most of these things myself for years, so there's no judgment here, just some observations that might help. The first pattern is relying entirely on the freezer. Most of us, when we have extra produce, throw it in the freezer. And freezing works fine up to a point, but freezer burn degrades quality over time. You're limited by freezer space, and one extended power outage can wipe out everything you've stored. The Amish don't have that vulnerability because none of their methods depend on electricity. A shelf of canned jars and a root cellar full of sand-packed carrot don't care if the power goes out. There's There's a resilience in that approach that I think more of us should build into our own systems. The second pattern is buying preservation equipment before learning the principles. A lot of folks go out and buy an expensive freeze dryer or a fancy dehydrator before they understand the basics of why food spoils and how to prevent it. The Amish start with knowledge, not equipment. Rebecca taught me the science of acidity and moisture and temperature before she ever handed me a jar. Once you understand the principles, the equipment is just a tool. Without the principles, the equipment can give you a false sense of security. The third pattern is treating preservation as separate from growing. Most of us grow our gardens, harvest what we can eat fresh, and then scramble to figure out what to do with the surplus. The Amish plan for preservation from the day they put seeds in the ground. They plant extra rows of green beans specifically for canning. They grow cabbage specifically for sauerkraut. They choose tomato varieties that are better for canning, meatier with fewer seeds, not just varieties that taste good fresh. When you grow with preservation in mind, the whole process becomes smoother and less frantic. The fourth pattern is fear-based avoidance. A lot of gardeners, and I was one of them, avoid canning entirely because of the botulism fear. But the Amish taught me that the fear comes from not understanding the science. When you understand that botulism spores are destroyed at 240 degrees Fahrenheit and that a pressure canner reaches that temperature reliably, the fear goes away. It's replaced by confidence and precision. You follow the tested process and the food is safe. It's that straightforward. Now here's the bonus I promised you at the beginning, and honestly, this one still amazes me. Lacto fermentation. This is the method that actually makes your vegetables more nutritious after you preserve them. That sounds like it shouldn't be possible, but the science is clear, and the Amish have known it for a long time. Here's how it works. When you submerge fresh vegetables in a saltwater brine and keep them in an anaerobic environment, meaning no air can reach them, the naturally occurring lactobacillus bacteria on the surface of the vegetables start to multiply. These are beneficial bacteria, the same kind found in yogurt. As they multiply, they produce lactic acid, which drops the pH of the brine and creates an environment where harmful bacteria like botulism and salmonella simply cannot survive. But here's the remarkable part. Those lactobacillus bacteria also produce B vitamins and increase the bioavailability of minerals in the vegetables. Your sauerkraut actually has more accessible nutrition than the raw cabbage you started with. Here's exactly how to do it. Take a head of fresh cabbage, about 2 to 3 pounds, remove the outer leaves, core it, and shred it finely. Weigh the shredded cabbage and calculate 2% of that weight in salt. For 2 pounds of cabbage, that's roughly 3 teaspoons of non-iodized salt. Iodized salt can inhibit the beneficial bacteria, so use sea salt, pickling salt, or kosher salt. Toss the cabbage and salt together in a large bowl and squeeze and massage it with your hands for about 5 to 10 minutes. You'll see liquid start to pool at the bottom of the bowl. That's the cabbage releasing its own brine. Pack the salted cabbage tightly into a clean mason jar, pressing it down firmly so the brine rises above the surface of the cabbage. Every bit of cabbage must be submerged. Any cabbage exposed to air can mold. Place a clean weight on top, something like a small jar filled with water that fits inside the mason jar. To keep everything pushed below the brine line, cover the top loosely with a cloth or a lid set on top without tightening it. Gas needs to be able to escape during fermentation. Set the jar in a spot out of direct sunlight at room temperature, roughly 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Within a day or two, you'll see tiny bubbles forming. That's the fermentation happening. Taste it after 3 days. If you like it tangy and mild, move it to cold storage. If you want a deeper, more sour flavor, let it go 5 to 7 days. Once it's where you like it, seal the jar and store it in your root cellar, a cool basement, or even a refrigerator. It will keep for 6 months or more and continue to develop in flavor slowly over time. I started making sauerkraut this way about 6 years ago after watching Rebecca do it in her kitchen. My first batch was a little too salty because I eyeballed the measurement instead of weighing it. My second batch was just right, and now I put up about 10 jars every fall, and my family goes through it all winter. It's one of the simplest, most forgiving preservation methods there is, and the health benefits are real. Now, what I've shared with you today is a real piece of the puzzle, but it's still just one piece. If you're tired of fighting the same battles every season, if you want a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, then I'd really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. It's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and it's everything I've learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It's got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold, and it includes a companion planting field guide so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you'll see it. The second way, if you're watching on a television or a computer screen, is to take out your phone, open up your camera like you're going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that and it'll bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it's the best investment you can make in your garden this year.